What's up guys, Nightingale here, and welcome back to the Adventurer's Black Book. Today we're covering Fribbels 101, and honestly this is really just the complete tutorial on how to use Fribbels. Before we get started, I do want to say this. For new players and intermediate players, this really isn't a program for you. I know that you may see how powerful it is and you're going, oh wow, I can really do a whole lot. Honestly, it's more of a hindrance to you right now than it is later on. Right now, if you're a beginner, you just need gear and you need to get units geared up. Doesn't really matter stats so much in the beginning. It's more about just getting gear, getting progressed, getting leveled up. For intermediate players, once, let's say, we're talking getting out of Wyvern 13, you still don't really need Fribbels yet because you're still to the point where you have too few units geared up and you're not to the point where you need to start min-maxing your stats completely out. What do I mean by this is, let's take a look at my account and we'll show you a little bit of a difference here. So let's jump into my main inventory. And what do you see right here when I click Max Enhance is a lot of gear. Now, here's the thing about the gear inventory that's a little bit deceiving. Is this 231 is what's sitting in my inventory. When I hide equipped, you still see all the gear in my inventory. So I have 231 unequipped items in my inventory currently. Now, I also want to say this. As of this video, which is 12/21/21, Fribbels does not have a way to scan in your equipment storage. So currently, this is not getting scanned into your game. So if anything is inside this inventory, you will not have it scanned into the game. So if you have anything in here that you want to check, or want to bring into the program, make sure you get it moved out and put it into your normal storage right here before we get started. So I have 231 just random pieces of equipment sitting around. Now what does that mean is all these units gear is technically not sitting in the inventory, they're sitting on units. Now this is a lot of gear to go through and a lot of gear to figure out if something's built properly. So if we want to go, say, let's just pick on LQC for whatever reason. If we're thinking, is LQC built as good as she could be? What if this was the most important unit on my account and I wanted to make sure she was built perfectly? Well, we can with Fribbels, but here's the thing. Starting off, you don't need it. All you need to know is we need to get attack, we need crit chance, we need crit damage, and we need a little bit of bulk. So your priority first is to make sure you can secure roughly, if in this case with Hellcutter, around 70% crit rate. And now everything else can go into crit damage because Hellcutter should spin up enough that by the time she takes her turn, she should have the 100% crit rate. And now it's just attack, bulk, and whatever else you're trying to do with your LQC. With Fribbels, you don't have to guess. It will tell you exactly what that is, which we'll show you here in just a little bit. But early on, for new players, you don't technically need this. So now let's jump on and start talking about what do we need, where do we need to go. So let's start with the desktop. Now, yes, that is bright and very annoying. We'll get to that in just a second. But we've got to go through another really bright screen before we can get started. So let's start with Google and get a couple things. All these links will be in the description below that you will need. So just go down to the description and they're all right there. First off is the main GitHub page for the Fribbels Epic 7 Optimizer. This is the main page. It's also got a bunch of information down here for general information about how to use Fribbels and what to expect and how everything works in a very, very good detailed way. We'll actually be reading that off here in a little bit. So this is a great source of information if you need it. But this is not where you actually get Fribbels. I will have this link right here, and thankfully for PC and Mac users, you both have access to this. There isn't the war of one can do this and one cannot. For PC users, you will need to come over here and get the executable file, which is the one I'm hovering over right here, and then Mac users, you will need this DMG. Now, the installations are slightly different depending on the operating system. I'm going to be covering the PC side here, but there's only one thing difference that Mac needs that PC does not, which I'll go over in just a second. The first thing that you'll need besides Fribbels is to make sure that you have the latest version of Java. Now, me playing Minecraft, I thought I had the latest version of Java and also 64-bit, but come to realize the first time I ever launched it, no, I did not have the 64-bit version, and it well lets you know. So make sure you have the 64-bit version of Java installed, which this link will be down below. Now, the Next one that you'll need that everybody will have to have is Python, which I will give you a direct link to that in just a second. But you will need to make sure that you have Python installed, and then NPCAP for PC users, you will need this as well. The good news is that right here inside the tutorial of the auto importer, it also gives you direct download links right here and right here to both Python and NPCAP. For Wireshark users, yours is right here, and then you will also need to do an extra step, it looks like, for Wireshark, which is do the chmod bpf.pkg. So your installation will be slightly different, but it looks like it's fairly clean cut. Won't take you long. All right. Now, everything's downloaded. Install it in this order is make sure that Fribbels is installed. Make sure you have Java installed. Then make sure that you have Python and NPCAP, in my case, is installed. And now restart your computer. Okay. Now, the next thing you'll want to do is launch your Epic 7 Fribbels Optimizer. And please, for the love of God, click this button. So much better. We are not blind. Now, in the case for me, you also want to make sure that you now shut down your Epic 7 account and just leave your emulator running. So this doesn't matter if you're on LD Player or Nox or BlueStacks. It all works the same. Make sure it's closed out. So this is the opening main screen when you open up your Fribbels for the first time. It should look something very similar to this. If it's slightly different, it's just due to the version or maybe a setting I've already tweaked. Because again, I'm not going to completely flush my settings because I actually still want to be able to use my version. If you notice right here, I actually have heroes installed and I have an order and all sorts of stuff. So I'm trying not to mess with that. So I'm just going through this and updating it. Now I'm going to show you from the desktop view. So this is going to be slightly smaller than normal, but for just the moment, I will bring up the Fribbels page so that you can see this a little bit better. We're going to click on the importer tab. This is the first thing that you want to do. Now, this has a couple different ways that you can import your heroes and your gear. The very painful way is to go do this manually, which you would add a hero and then you would take screenshots of your gear through BlueStacks or whatever player, and it has to be a specific file format, and then you upload the screenshots and it'll automatically bring them in that way. Or you do it the painless way, which is download those 2 extra programs and you come to this tab right here. Now, thankfully, they give you a tutorial. If for whatever reason you don't want to come back to this video, it gives you the basic information of what you need to know to do the auto importer. Now, let's talk about a couple of the different tabs here. So we scrub through all the text and we come down here. What is this for? This is to tell them what gear do you want to take in. Now, currently, it's telling it to take in anything from +6 and up. Cool. But here's my recommendation. Go ahead and send everything in. Reason for this is this way you're not adding any extra gear to your Fribbels, and if you update it, you don't accidentally get a duplicate of that piece once you finally bring it in. So if you happen to just be crafting a brand new piece of gear and it rolls awesome and you manually input it here and then you rescan the game, it's going to recognize that it might look up and see 2 different pieces of gear because you've created one, it's sitting on the unit, and now that new piece may be sitting there unleveled. So don't let it trick you that way. Go ahead and scan everything in from base. Now what it's asking you here is to bring in which heroes. Only import optimizer heroes. It's not what we're after. We're only bringing 6 stars, not what we're after. We want to bring in as much as we possibly can into Fribbels because we want to see, get everything start rolling on as many units as possible. So it will only scan in, currently as of this version, you can only scan in up to 5-star heroes, which means if you have any 4-star hero that you haven't built yet, but you're wanting to theory craft, you will have to add them manually, which I will show you later. Now, we are going to go ahead and tell it to bring in all of the 5-star heroes and above. Now, the next step is to come here to the, let's do this through this tab. And next up, we want to start the scan because that's the first thing we want to do before we launch Epic 7. We want to make sure it's starting to scan. So we click this. And if I click Fribbels right here, you should see start scanning right there. We're good to go. So let's bring up both versions and launch our Epic 7 client. And again, this can be done on any emulator. This is just, I'm using BlueStacks. So nothing's gonna change down here. You shouldn't see any information here. We're just waiting for the start button to show up. We click it, which will take us to our lobby. And here we go. Now I just wait just a second, make sure everything settles in, no pop-ups, no nothing. All right, we're done. It's finished scanning, so now we can hit stop scanning. So let's click stop scanning. Bring up Fribbels. Okay, so as you can see, we've scanned in now 577 different items. That's more than the 231 that was sitting, or 233 that was sitting in my inventory. So this is everything on a unit, and this is now everything in my inventory. If there is an error message that pop up, I believe it's the fact that you haven't restarted your computer or Java is messed up, is when, if there's an error message that pops up here. I had one error message when I first started trying to use this. I restarted my computer and then it went away, and I've always had a successful scan in. Okay, next up, what do we need is we need to get this information actually into Fribbels, because right now, if you were to click over, nothing is actually inside your program. So let me jump to the desktop so that you'll get to see everything from here. We're going to click export, and now you can see I have a couple different gears. You should just go ahead and let it be gear. I'm gonna name it gear 4 because I don't wanna actually overwrite gear 3, because gear 3 is where my current data is, and I have a lot of stuff that I'm trying to keep track of because there's some builds I'm a little iffy on or that I may actually end up sending on. But I can name it gear 4, and we're going to hit save. And now it's saved that information. It tells you right where it's saved, so you don't have to go looking for it. Next up, you will come over here and click merge data. Go to the file that you just saved. Yours is gonna be gear, but mine's gonna be gear 4, and we're gonna hit load file. It says, for me, it's gonna say, are you sure you want to overwrite the optimizer's hero data or in-game hero data? Yes. I don't believe, it's been a minute since I've done a fresh, clean install. It may not give you that right away, but if it does, it's the same thing for you because it's a blank instance. Okay, now we're inside Fribbels. So the next thing you should check is, did everything come in? Well, do you have heroes here? Yes or no? If it's no, then you probably messed up somewhere along the way. Next check for you, especially if this is your first time, is check to make sure your gear came in. Yes or no? Okay, now, just to add another safety layer, check to make sure that the gear is actually where it says it's supposed to be on just a unit. Just to make sure that, yep, that's the gear on it. Well, I can come over here to my Sirmia and I can say, yep, that is definitely the gear, which I'm gonna bring up right here. So yes, that is definitely that sword. Yep, everything is good to go. Okay. Now, we've officially brought all of our heroes and all of our gear that we're gonna be working on inside of Fribbels. Now we're gonna pop over back to Fribbels and we're gonna walk over a few other things. Well, what's the first and most important thing is making sure that you have heroes. So let's just go ahead and, at this point, add in a hero that is not here. So if I go to bring back my, let's actually bring up the full BlueStacks version real quick. And let's go to heroes right here. And let's add in a hero that is currently 4-star that is not gonna be added in. Okay, Kitty Clarissa. I don't have Kitty Clarissa inside of my Fribbels. So let's go right here, Fribbels, and here we are. We're inside the main hero tab. So if you're somewhere over here, make sure you are specifically on the hero tab. What are we gonna look for? We're gonna type in Kitty Clarissa. So make sure it says Kitty and Clarissa. Check. Now we're gonna click add hero. And here we go. So we've added Kitty Clarissa now inside of Fribbels. The next thing to do is go, what artifact does she have? Well, at this point, I want to see it based off of Strack's Gauntlet. So let's just go ahead and type in Strack. And we're going to just say I have a plus 30 of it just for the sake of the tutorial. Does she have an exclusive equipment or an imprint? Yeah, sure, why not? No, she doesn't. But I would just go ahead and, okay, let's do it real. I don't have an imprint and I don't have her exclusive equipment yet. But if you're wanting to calculate it based off of things you are going to know, yes, then go ahead and turn and crank this up so that you can see the maximum value of that you're going to be trying to get, because this will be calculated inside of the optimizations later on. So make sure that if a hero is at 5-star, calculate it to a 6-star. You always want to see its 6-star stat first. Don't care about its 5-star unless you are trying to build something to completely function at 5-star. always work at it at 6-star if you absolutely have to. This way you'll get the best results and make sure you get the most efficient use of the gear. So in this case, because of what we're going to be doing with her, we want to make sure that we have the most HP and attack baked into her, because we're going to be trying to get her as bulky as possible for whatever reason. We want to let it know that we are going to have her triple S'd by the point we're going to use her, so we need to make sure we calculate the resistance there. And because of what she does, we're going to want to make sure we get the maximum resistance off of her exclusive equipment. Now, do note this, that it does not matter what exclusive equipment you have, it's just the stat of it is the only thing that matters here. So we're going to click OK. Now, the next thing to point out, now that we've added a hero, let's talk about actually checking heroes that you want to update, because there is something I want to let you see right here. If we go to a unit I have not actually worked on, that was scanned in, that is actually leveled up. So let's see here. I have, who's somebody I have not been actually working? That's the only thing I'm trying to think of. Somebody I haven't scanned recently. Okay, maybe Elena? Okay, perfect. So, Elena right here is showing that she has no artifact level, no artifact, there's no level, no imprint, no exclusive equipment, and she is 6-star, which is correct. She is 6-star. The optimizer will not scan in your artifacts, so any unit you are going to be using, you will need to come through and add in the artifact. In this case, I think her artifact was Doctor's Bag, and that should be 15. So she will have Doctor's Bag. Her imprint is a imprint for her. She does not have an exclusive equipment, and she is 6-star. So you will need to make sure you do that for any hero that you are scanning in that you are wanting to optimize at the current moment, or you can do this one at a time. But I would just say take a quick pass on anything you know you're going to immediately be hitting, and just add everything in. Well, for the sake of the tutorial, we're going to give you a run through on exactly what to do. So I'm going to pick on a prime candidate right here. Everybody should have him. He is Arbiter Vildred. You can get him from your Moonlight connection, and we're going to make a couple different things, and we're going to show you just a few different things and how to use Fribbels now based off of Arby. So with Arby, the reason I pick him is because there's a couple different things we can show off. We're going to come over here to the optimizer now. Now this is where we're actually going to really get down to building the unit. So we're going to type in Arbiter Vildred, and we're going to bring his tab up. Now you can see that it's already bringing up stats. Yours will not. This is why I said, because I've already been searching around and playing on and working on, there's already information saved inside of the settings files of Fribbels. Yours will look blank, which yours will end up looking just like this when it's all said and done. Should probably look just like this. So let's turn this off, turn this off. Whoops, that's everything. And turn that off. We're gonna come here and turn off the 2 pieces and the other pieces. Okay, yours will probably look a lot like this, more than likely, depending on what settings you've set up prior. If you've done anything, if you've been looking around, you can actually tell it what to do by default when it comes in. This has just been from the last time I've done it, but I normally have these 3 ticked up just so that I can see hero priority, which will make it look like this. When every time you bring up a new unit, it will look like this. Now let me explain these things so that you understand what is going on here. So use reforged stats is going to make it to where it's going to calculate all of your stats based off of if the pieces were reforged. This is highly important when trying to figure out the absolute max of a build. Now, if you're trying to figure out what you've got currently, you turn that off your build. If it has to have a specific requirement, so let's say, for instance, Wyvern one-shot with my Clarissa build, I had to have 350 crit damage and 4,554 attack exactly with my Warhorn and my imprints and everything. So I knew I had to have that. In this case, and I knew I had 0 way to reforge anything, then yes, you need to figure out how to get your stats based off of that. In this case, we're going to be looking at any gear I have that could potentially need a reforge, because we're going to say we are not broke completely and we want to be able to get an optimization. Cool. Now, with Arby, we've got a couple different philosophies of use for Arby. You've got the fast opener surprise, pray for Gab, and you'll probably kill whatever it is. You've got the faster Arby to just be very, very annoying. You've got the mid-speed damage Arby, which is going to be more damage, a little bit slower, probably is a little more deathly. You're probably more, this is probably where the generic population of Arby users are at this point, or beginners. And then you have the slower Arbys, which are scary as all heck, because they are probably degen, or for whatever reason they are now using Portrait of Savior, something scary to try to one-shot you if you do not kill him. Or in the case of they're hoping you don't have a res or anything and trying to catch you off guard with a return Gab or return Death Send from him. Well, let's theory craft a little bit, and we're gonna go, well, here's the thing. Arby's really gonna need 2 necklaces and only 2 necklaces, so we're gonna go ahead and just check up the crit damage here. We know he's only going to be able to use attack, but you know what, just in case there is any flat attack, which I know there's not, but just in case, for whatever reason, in case it's a speed issue, we're going to put that there, and we know he's going to need speed boots. Cool. Next, before we hit search, what else do we need to check? We need to come over here now and make sure that we're going to be searching our locked items and our equipped items. So this means anything that's equipped on a user will be getting scanned in, and then anything that is locked will also get scanned in. You can also say to keep current, so if you're trying to keep his current stats, you can check that. You can use substats mods. I never use this. And then you can technically use a hero priority list, which is actually this list right here. So if you notice that in the initial list, I've got Sermia, Cigarette, Watcher, Shuri, Bike, and Clarissa, Karan. Basically, I've got all my hunt units at the top of the list. So meaning if Arbiter Vildred was right here below, let's say, Vivian, it would not look at any gear above him, or above Vivian, and it would look for all gear Arby and below. This is very helpful later on if you have absolutely no builds, but I'm also going to show you another way and method of doing this, which will make things a little bit easier or harder depending on what you're trying to do on specific units. Well, in this case, today, for the sake of the video, we're going to try to make him go fast as all heck. So I know at that case, we probably want to go no less damage than 3,400 damage, or for his attack. As far as speed, let's be modest just so that we can get some results. Let's say 220 speed is our absolute bare minimum, just in case we get some super nuke to pop up. And because, you know, we're degenerate, we might start with 90 crit rate, because, you know, we have Alexa's Basket. It should technically proc. And then we're going to say we're going to have it not go any further than the overcap of 105 crit damage. If you take this off, he could actually have 130 crit damage if you wanted. It'd be a waste of stats. And as far as crit damage, because we're going faster, we know we're going to lose out on some crit damage. So let's say no slower than, you know what, let's try to get it as fast as possible. No lower than 220 crit damage. Now, is this a good Arby to start with? No, but I want to get at least a generic something in here built. So we have our crit chance, crit damage next. So obviously we're going damage, and speed. So he's got to go fast. He wants to be zooming. Well, what sets do that? Well, that's speed. And then we're going to pick for Arby, we're going to pick critical and immunity. Penetration does not work for him, so that's a useless thing. And everything else would not give us any stats worthwhile. Now, we want to, if this was the case where I had a unit where I said absolutely not, for whatever reason, let's just say absolutely I don't want to use Clarissa's gear. At this point, we could add Clarissa into this list, which will exclude the search of all of her gear. So if you need to be very careful, but in this case, we want to make sure he has got the most amount of juice possible we can bake into him. So we're going to search it like this. Now, before we click send, we want to make sure that we check our Arbiter Vildred. If you set this up prior, you'd be checking it, but in this case, we're just going to double check. He's on Moonlight Dreamblade from where I was searching earlier, so this would change the results. So let's make sure he is sitting on his Alexa's Basket at plus 30. Mine is not imprinted, and I do not, at this point, pray, or let's just pray, he does not ever get an exclusive equipment. He does not need one. He's already broken as is. So there we go. It's updated his stats. Now, if you actually paid attention, you could probably see that the stats slightly changed there because of the difference of Moonlight Dreamblade and Alexa's Basket. So it will automatically update it. You don't have to rescan anything in. So let's come here to the optimizer. And the last thing we want to do is set up our substat priority. What does this do is basically saying, look for these stats. I want to focus this more over other things. So for Arby, we want damage. We are going to leave the HP and defense at neutral for this build. Speed, yes. Crit rate, yes. Crit damage, pretty yes. Effectiveness, get out and get out. We want all stats. We want this as pure as possible to be just pure raw damage. But yes, I want to make sure speed and crit rate are very vital, because at this point, we want to make sure he's critting. Now, the only reason I set it up for 90% crit chance is because I want to see if I can get a higher speed than what I think he can get. So that's why I set the bar a little bit lower here, because I want to get this stat to show up. Now you can see that we are looking at roughly 500,000 or 500 million results. Well, that's going to be way too much. I'm going to say if we can't get this in my top 30% gear, we don't belong here for what we're trying to do. And what this does is this is going to take from the all your plus 15s to, or your reforges to your plus 15s, and it's going to work down that way till it gets down to bad quality gear. All right. So we're ready to search. So we're going to click start. And now it's going to start scanning in. The load will be here. If you get an error, it might be because of something you've set up. There might be errors pop up letting you know that you don't have something selected. That's fine. As long as you see it scanning and showing up, that's all you are after. So in this case, we got 234,000 results to be able to make fast zoomy Arby. Okay, well, let's talk about all these bars so that you understand what everything is. Now, I've got a screenshot here of the main web page. So if you go to the main Fribbels page, it will have these stats that you can read over at any point in time if anything here gets confusing. So let's read them from left to right. We're going to go all the way across. So it's first off, it's showing your sets. So in this case, it's showing speed icon and crit rate icon. Then it's attack, defense, speed, crit rate, crit damage, effectiveness, resist, and your CP. Now we're going to read the rest of these going across. So according to Fribbels, and this is what they read, so just that we're all clear, HPS is the health times speed rating. It's useful for optimizing units that want a combination of speed and pure health. Okay, so there's certain units where they go off of health and speed. So it's got a calculation for that. EHP is effective HP, calculated by HP times defense divided by 300 plus 1. EHP is a measure of how much damage your unit can take before dying. This is useful in rating tankiness of units. So this is a very important stat that you will want to monitor a lot, especially in bruisers and tanks or soul weavers or things like that. This is going to be a very important stat. Heck, it even is kind of important depending on the damage deal you're building. HPS or EHPS is effectiveness or the effective HP times speed rating, useful for optimizing units where you want a combination of speed, HP, and defense for tankiness. So if there's something that you need speed and tankiness with, you need to calculate it based off of this. Now we go to damage. Damage is the average damage calculated by attack times crit chance times crit damage. Measures how much damage your unit will deal on average. Note that this will take crit chance into account, so lowering your crit chance impacts the damage rating because you'll crit less often, which lowers your average output. Which is why there's a better one to check when you know you're going to have crit rate. Now, for damage S, DMGS, DPS rating calculated by attack, crit chance, crit damage, and speed measures how fast your unit can dish out damage. So this will determine like how fast they're constantly spinning it out. Now, the one that's the most important, especially for today when we're going to be looking at Arby, is the MCD, which is max crit damage, which is calculated by attack times crit damage. This does not take into account crit chance as opposed to damage. It assumes you will have a 100% crit chance, useful for measuring damage with, like they said, CDOM, where you need 50% crit chance, or PvE units that only need 85% with elemental advantage. So in this case, I definitely recommend checking your MCD in terms of most of your effective damage dealers, because if you know they're critting, this is the best way to see where their damages are at. MCDS is the max DPS rating calculated times attack times crit damage times speed, similar to damage S without crit chance. So it's the same thing, but without the crit chance calculation. Damage H, or DMGH, is bruiser rating, which is calculated by health times crit damage, useful for HP scaling bruisers. So something like Alencia or Apocalypse Ravi, things like that. You can kind of see how they're scaling off of that. MCD and damage H will be useful for seeing how well you're really performing. And then, of course, we've already said CP is the combat rating of your just overall unit of determining, well, they say it is the, this is CP where you see the unit stats page in game. This doesn't take skills into account. Useful for optimizing unused characters with leftover gear for world boss. Really, that's what it comes down to, is just a CP calculator. Okay, so now that we know what the stats are, let's start looking. So we want Arby to go fast. let's make Arby go fast. So we come over here to the speed column. We're going to click it once, which is now going to give us our fastest possible Arby in game, which with these current parameters is 267 speed. So that is fast boy. Yes, there are faster units out there, but for a unit like this, this is screaming fast. There's not many times you're going to see Arby up at this speed. Sure, you'll occasionally see some, but not often. So we now understand that we can get him no faster than 267 speed. Okay. And then, of course, the minimum is 220. But let's come over to max crit damage, because we know we want him to be... We're going to assume that he's going to have max crit rate. So let's see how much damage can he output. So right now with the current parameters, this is our most damaging build right here. So you can see the gears changing down here below between the two. Now what this is also showing you is it's showing you with the reforges. So if you look and notice, Lulika's sword is not reforged, which is why it has the attack and it's pointing an arrow, which is showing you that it's technically calculating her attack based off of that. Everybody else's pieces are reforged, so it's calculating it based off of this sword. So if we're wanting absolutely highest damage with a minimum speed of 220, this is our build. So in this case, we're going to come over here to this lower column where actions are at. Now, you can technically right here, you can put equip, you can lock this build, you can select all the builds for whatever reason, you can unequip, you can do whatever you need to do to select it. But in this case, because we're looking for the maximum damage that we can possibly get with also the same amount of speed, so if we're okay at 220 and we want the hardest hitting Arby, let's save this build. But you know what? Let's refine this a little bit more, and I'm going to show you why this is important. So at this point, we're going to show you how to tweak the parameters a little bit from this. Now, I know because I had my Arby at 255 speed, he can still clap at 240. So let's go ahead for the sake of the video, let's crank up his speed here, and we're going to say, absolutely, I don't believe in this, you know, because 50-50 crit rated does exist. So it's either 100 or it's 50%, and we're going to hit OK on that. So now the only parameters that we care about is, again, staying below or above 3,400. He's now going to be the minimum of 240 speed. We're going to now look at 100% crit rate. We don't want him to go too much further over that. And we're going to say crit damage is just bonus because we're caring more about him going first. So you don't have to hit search again. You can now actually at this point just click filter. So we're going to click filter and it's now going to take all those results and filter it to now these new parameters. So if you notice, we now lost this build. So let's click on this. And now with a quick little change, we now have the next highest damaging Arby coming in at 11,000 even MCD. What do you know on that? Actually, that's the first time I think I've seen that. So if we want the fastest Arby at 200 and actually 41 speed and 105 crit rate, this is why that's important, is because notice it is slightly overcapped here. This is slightly overcapped, which is why we set our maximum crit rate. Cool. This is actually a really good Arby. You know, if I wanted to take this, cool. This would be a good optimized Arby. Now, he's got very little bulk. We don't have any wasted stats anywhere. Notice there's no effectiveness. There's no resistance. This is pure damage Arby at 241. Well, at this point, what you could do is you can actually even go a little bit further inside your analysis, because if you know that you want to go no less than, let's say, in this case, just because I can see down there, there's 10,000 MCD. So we're going to put in 10,000 MCD as the minimum. We're going to hit filter. And the reason I want to do this is because now I want to get the build as fast as possible inside this parameter. We're going to come over here back to the speed column. And now, here we go. There's my original Arby right there. That was my day one Arby. Every stat on the mark. That's the whole reason why I knew I could do this. So we knew that he's just slightly above 10,000 MCD, but I can now get a 255 speed Arby with 100% crit chance, 262 crit damage, and 3,825 attack. When this thing comes across you, it's going to hurt. So if I want to save this just to go back to my build, now if you notice, I keep saving builds, but we don't see them. Now, let me show you where that is at. Let's come over to the Hero tab. Now, in the Hero tab, we will now need to reset Arby, so just tick off of Arby and come back down to Arby, and you'll see the two builds we just saved earlier. Now, here's the cool thing. This now gives us the ability to see kind of what we want to tweak and what we want to look at. So if I change his artifact or anything like that, it will change the stats down here. It also shows us, of course, and across all of them, it shows us the gear score, so which one has higher rated gear and where things are considered there. And it also lets me know that, hey, this build's gonna need an upgrade to get these stats. Now check this out. If you want to see what it's currently sitting on your unit right now, come over here to this Reforge Stat button and turn it off. And it'll show you the build as if nothing needed to be reforged. So if you turn everything off, this is what it would be currently on your unit. So if you've got a bunch of stuff that has needs reforges, you can turn this off and see what it is sitting currently on your unit. Really cool that you can turn it on and off and it instantly calculates it with no uptime or downtime. So we're gonna leave this on full reforge, and now we want to talk about a couple different other things. Well, let's say I'm ready to go back. I want to commit Arby's gear back to him. I want him to go back to his day one Arby. Well, you're gonna technically have to do this from in-game. There's no way currently, as the program allows now, for you to just click go and this go immediately onto your Arby. What you'd have to do now is you'd have to go and track down each one of these pieces, which thankfully it tells you right here. This is where the information lies. This is where the sword's gonna be sitting. This is where your helmet, your chest, your necklace, your ring, and your boots. It's all right there. All their portraits line up to where their gear is at. So let's bring this over real quick to BlueStacks. And actually, you know what? Bring it over here to the Fribbels version. So just to make the point, we're gonna go look for Elfelt real quick, just to show you that the gear is actually there and it is actually that piece. So Elfelt's helmet, which is right here. So Elfelt's helmet is right here. And if we click on this, we make it bigger. There we go. So the helmet has 17 speed, it's 106 flat attack with 6 crit damage and 7% attack. So yes, that is definitely that helmet. So therefore, you just go through, and as you would normally equip gear on your units, you will now go through and do that. So the stats should always match. If something's happened and your gear's crossed up, you may need to try to rescan the game. But just to take note of the piece of the stats, and you might be able to find it that way. Because in case you are worried that it's not that piece is not there, you can always come here to the gear menu. You can come right here, and in this case, we need a speed helm, and because it's easy to pick up, we need flat attack with since I know it has speed. Bang there. Go to the sword, and there you go. There is where the piece actually sits. Okay, yes, it is on Elfelt. So. Or this was sitting on Sermi or whatever. You kind of get the point. You can just search for it that way. So do double check it that way just to make sure where things do lie. All right, the next thing we want to talk about with Fribbels is how to add gear to Fribbels, and also a couple different things about this menu, which is really, really helpful, which is the actual gear menu. This is what's calculated behind the scenes on the optimizers. All of this information is very, very vital. Well, because people like to brag about their gear score, I don't like gear score. I don't like people talking about it because a lot of people don't understand gear score well enough to understand, especially newer players, don't understand the value of what the stats they actually have are. Gear score is something that a lot of people talk about and they like to flex. Well, if you're curious about what's on your account and you're wanting to see the maximum gear score pieces, here you go. You can actually check this out here. The reason I'm going to show you this is just because you can actually see that I have two 78 pieces here, which, according to the way they like to brag, these are very high-end pieces. So this technically shows a quality of gear here, but I don't like necessarily ever figuring out this because it doesn't matter to me. As long as the stat gives me everything I need inside that piece, sure. Bad rolls, I made some bad rolls and I've reforged some bad rolls. You can come down here and see some 90 pieces that didn't need to be reforged, that are 90. But it gave me the stats because through Fribbels, I was like, screw it. I'm getting exactly what I need, and I'm never having to touch this ever again. It functions, it works, it's great. But inside here, you can check and see what all you have in a general aspect of gear. It tells you where it's at, where it's equipped, is it locked. It gives you the different scores, and it lets you know a general function of how good your quality of your gear is. Now, the cool thing is you can actually come over here and add gear. So let's do this for the sake of the tutorial. We are going to go here to BlueStacks, and we're going to add in a piece of gear. Well, since the gear doesn't exist in my inventory, we're going to make a piece exist. And now we're going to pray to RNGesus that we are going to get a legendary Katie's sword right here. Well, an epic Katie's sword. But it's going to be legendary because this thing's going to be perfect rolled. Are you ready? It's going to be a pen epic sword. I'm calling it right here. It's totally going to be just god tier. And let's go. Crap. Anyway, but we're going to take this as the example because we've crafted it. All right. So let's jump over here to this window so that you can see what we're doing. So we're going to add this now inside of Fribbels so that we can calculate this as we level this thing up if we're going to actually level it up, which we are not. So in this case, we're going to come here. We're going to click Add New Item. It's not equipped on anybody. It is a weapon. We have a set for penetration. That was about the only thing I got right on it. And the crit damage is technically kind of cool. It is a hunt piece. You would click conversion if it is a converted piece from the Alchemist Steeple, and then you would click none if it is like a piece from, if it's a piece from like Story or Hell Raid, that's like an 88 piece, you would click none there. Rank, in this case, it is Heroic. It is definitely a 85 piece. It is at 0. Its current attack is 100. And it's going to have 3 substats of, I think that's flat health. I'm having to look at the small screen because Fribbels is just covering that up, and I know it was crit damage and speed. The speed was, I know it was 2, the crit damage was 6, and the flat health is 152. 152. Okay, so we're going to now add this into our Fribbels Epic 7 Optimizer. Click. Done. So now that piece of gear is now in here, and it's showing you the sword right here. Well, let's say for whatever bizarre reason we decide to edit or to level this piece of gear up, and we're gonna go along the way. So let's just say, just for the video, we'll say it went to +3, we leveled it, and we got 4 crit damage, and we would click there. So you would just click OK and send it, and there you go. Okay, but I don't want it to do this. Just for the sake of the tutorial, we're going to turn this back to 0, and we're going to turn this back to 6. So let's talk about a couple of the other functions down here to help you find stuff. So remember me talking about wanting to level gear and things of that nature? Well, let's talk about finding this sword. Even though it's clearly sitting right here, let's find this sword another way. There gives you a lot of different functions right down in here to be able to find those stats. So we know this is a pen sword, so we're going to come over here to pen. We know it's a sword, so we can definitely click that. And we remember seeing it in our inventory, and it had speed. There we go. So right here, it shows us our sword is right here, and we can filter it through that. You can also, if you've got a bunch of them, you can use this to filter it. Another cool thing that you can do from here is you can actually see the Reforged Gem modification values. So if I go to something, I will have to find this real quick to be able to do this. I should have done this ahead of time. But if we go click on, let's see here. If I try to bring up that Lifesteal Helm, which has 9 speed, it should be an 88 piece. Okay, good. So I can bring that up right here. So if I want to see any modification gems to this, let's see, what gem do I have? So let's go to just make sure that this is correct. That's 50 to 77. So if I click this, yep, you can double check what your modification gems would look like if you reforged that stat, which is a really cool function to help figure out, is this worth taking a mod gem to or not, without having to actually get the mod gem and pray that it's correct or pray that it rolls. You can always check it right through here by coming over and seeing what it mods out to, which will tell you the most efficient place to use it if you actually need to. So that's a really cool function that you can do inside of Fribbels, and it matches up just perfectly. The next thing that we want to talk about is the general use of going through Fribbels, really just to kind of wrap this up. Personally, when I'm going through Fribbels, I like to go through, and if I know I'm going to be doing a full session sit down of reworking several different units, I will come through and I will make sure that all my artifacts, all my imprints are proper and set up. I will go through all of them. I will set up a hero priority list if I'm going to be planning on going through a big binge. But typically, if I'm just wanting to toy around with a unit for whatever reason, I will do that. If I'm trying to figure out something based off of their EHP or their, if I need to figure out if I want to get more damage on them or anything like that. Like an example would be, not that I'm going to go searching for it, but we'll just say for an example, I'm wanting to work on Archdemon Shadow. She's about to get a buff, and I want to try to make her better. I would go through here, I'd pick out some stuff, see what she needs, but then I would be going through telling it, okay, you can't take from these units, but I'm willing to lose some from this, which might be acceptable, which is why I don't set up the hero priority list all the time, because I would rather pick what I can and can't take from for this specific unit, because maybe if it does show up better and if I get all the benchmarks I want, it might be worth changing that unit around a little bit versus the just instant saying absolutely not. In this case, my absolutely nots finish at my hunt teams because I don't want a single one of them being touched. Now that I've got all my one-shots set up, they are absolutely not. So in theory, I can technically now use the hero priority list, and now anything from that unit below is incorrect. But that means you will have to move this unit up to the very top of the hero priority list, up to the hunt units, in my case, which is why I would rather just come through and select out the stuff that I know it's going to steal from. Or curious, most of the time, I let it all go. Use this as a tool to figure out what can your account do, but don't live by this. Still learn how to develop and work on your account, and don't just fully trust Fribbels. It's an amazing program. I want to thank everybody who's worked on it. You guys are amazing for getting a program like this. It really does help players out, especially like me, where I'm at, and now trying to better build my units. Yes, this has ruined a few of my units, but at the same time, it's also made a lot of my other units really, really good. Because yes, I pulled away gear from units I necessarily wouldn't have done, but I now gained a higher quality, tighter set of units, and eventually those units that you don't touch are going to grow. You'll eventually get more and more units the more and more gear you get. As far as another general practice, you know, honestly, once every so often, just full wipe it. Go into your settings. Here, I can do it. I can show you this through here. So I'm going to bring this over to the main window right here. This will be the last thing we cover. So if you want to do a full wipe, all you have to do is come in here, delete all of this, start up Fribbels again, or with Fribbels closed, just delete all this, start up Fribbels, and there you go. You go through the tutorial one last time, and you can completely wipe everything you've done and start 100% over from the ground up. There will be no save data, no nothing, and it's a fresh, clean install of Fribbels. Do that every so often just to make sure that you don't have any weird excess gear floating around that may or may not have been deleted, reforged, whatever. Just go through and do a clean wipe every so often. Typically, once I go through a full ungear, unequipped session, I will go rewipe and then scan everything in for the next, maybe, hunt buff. So after every hunt buff, I'll do a full wipe start over. So that's going to cover everything, in my opinion, that you need to know about Fribbels Epic 7 Optimizer. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. I'll be happy to try to help out with anything that I can as far as this. I know there's a lot of information. All the links to everything will be down in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.